My name's Andrew Nette, not Nette, but that's okay. I'm here to talk about Australia Post's journey to modern architecture and observability. So, my son's 5 years old. He loves Pokemon. Consequently, I love Pokemon. I'm right into Pokemon now. I've always got the song going around in my head. And what I love about Pokemon is they're always talking about collaboration and the trainers working together with the Pokemon, and they're always on a journey. They're going from place to place, and they're training, and they're getting better. And the reason I bring this up is because it leads really well into my presentation about our journey into modern architecture and observability. So I'm lucky enough to be the head of platform engineering for Australia Post. And before you ask, I don't know where your parcel is. I work specifically in product engineering. And product engineering for Australia Post, we look after the technical delivery and maintenance of the product experience for Australia Post. And that's where most of the digital work happens for Post. I lead a team of 30 engineers who are passionate about helping our delivery teams get their products into market. And they're also passionate about technology. They love cloud engineering. They love DevOps and automation and SRE. The platform engineering team supports 4 delivery streams and over 250 developers. And the developers are embedded with our business stakeholders to help get our products to market. The platform engineering team provide basically a frictionless path for our delivery teams to get their applications into production. And we also help support the apps once they get into production. So we've created some different models to help, hybrid models for our teams to help support. So there's a full end-to-end support that we provide, with delivery teams providing an escalation as a third level escalation, all the way up to the delivery teams providing their full DevOps and doing all of the support, and we provide advice where required. So today I want to go over a few things. I want to talk about the history of our digital transformation at Post, the technical landscape of our digital applications, a bit of observability generally. I think there's a bit of confusion about about observability and what it actually means, and I just want to give my thoughts on that. So everybody knows Australia Post. We've been around for 210 years. We're Australia's most recognised and trusted brand. We employ over 70,000 employees across Australia. Over 4,000 post offices, which means we've got the largest retail network in Australia. We have 325 parcel locker locations, over 15,000 street posting boxes. And last year we shipped 3.3 billion items through our network. We provide services for all of Australia, even into the remote and regional areas. And we are known as a self-funded government enterprise, which means we receive no funding from the government at all. That's something we're proud of. We actually give money back to the government. We work we have a community service obligation, which means that we deliver to every street and every house every day. And the obligation is something we take really seriously. We love the customer service aspect of what we do, or the community service aspect of what we do. So our digital transformation started in 2013. The CEO at the time decided that for Australia Post to be relevant for another 200 years, we had to embrace new technologies and new ways of working. Our time to market was incredibly slow at the time. It was taking up to 50 days for code to reach production, so environments were really slow in spinning up. So the Digital Delivery Centre was created, and that's the predecessor to product engineering, which is where I work. And the focus was on flow and speed and how we could do things more quickly. And so we invested in things like automation of our environments, self-service for our engineers, small batch sizes for our features, cloud architecture for elasticity and agility, and standardization for simplicity. And it was all anything we could do to try and make things go more quickly. And we really focused on culture. We wanted people who had worked with new technologies, but we also wanted the right type of people, so culture was a big focus for us. We created some principles which helped sort of drive that culture. And we looked for T-shaped people. So we wanted the broad breadth, different technologies, different domains, different perspectives on troubleshooting. We also wanted people with strong beliefs. We wanted people to stand behind the culture and the way of working that we were creating. And we wanted resilience. It's hard to drive change through big enterprises, and we needed people who were resilient to be able to do that. And we invested in capabilities. We created long-running teams and tribes of people who cared for and loved and owned the assets they created. They balanced feature delivery with operational hygiene, and they understood the importance of DevOps. And we also looked at the different approaches. So we focused on flow. We optimized for continual delivery. We wanted to be delivering value all the time, constantly. Everything we did, we approached iteratively, and we were just focusing on delivering value as we go. So as part of our development, we looked at, we adapted the Spotify model. We created teams and tribes. We adapted a scaled agile framework. But we didn't do it everywhere. We adapted it for certain teams, certain tribes, where it made sense. It was always about what was going to deliver the most value across our teams and tribes. And what we really focused on was how could we best enable our developers? How could we remove blockers? How could we let them, how could we empower them? So we worked with our security teams, architecture teams, service management and change management, even HR and finance to do anything we could to remove blockers and allow our teams to get stuff done. As you can see from this slide, over time, we scaled out, we got bigger, we were quite successful. We were able to get things into production in about 12 minutes. So our time to market has significantly increased. And we were using a microservices architecture, so our number of things in production scaled out as well, which meant our environment got a lot more complex, and we had to think about the way we monitored those applications differently. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. And you can also see the numbers, this is from 2017, it was kind of the last time we took this mark. We've really stabilized, we've hit a kind of a peak of our maturity curve, and we've been focusing on other areas where we're evolving and doing things differently. So I want to talk about the technical aspects now a little bit, get to some more interesting things. The applications that we develop are in the systems of innovation and systems of differentiation in the pace layered strategy. So the pace layered strategy just talks about the pace of change that you should be looking for the applications that sit in those certain layers. So in the systems of innovation, you're looking at consumer-facing applications, and there's a lot of change. Things are changing rapidly. You're doing your A/B testing and adding features really rapidly. The systems of differentiation is more about when you have capabilities that are specific to your organization and how you present those, and things are generally a bit slower. And for us, it's one of our lodgement systems, and because we integrated with big enterprises, the pace of change is a bit slower because we have to coordinate across those organizations. And the final one is the systems of record. And the systems of record don't change very often and probably shouldn't. They're your most stable applications. So all of our applications are customer facing, and we support everyone from everyday consumers who are trying to track a parcel or redirect a parcel to another location, to large enterprises who are directly integrated via our APIs into our parcel delivery systems. Technically, we're 100% Java, we're 100% in AWS. We have scaled out our microservice architecture using a standard EC2 instance with the load balancing and redundancy built in. We have 2 cloud environments that we support, one which is for our public workloads and one which is for our compliant workloads, and the compliance that we support is PCI for payments and ISM for government and identity workloads. Our CI/CD tooling is based on Bitbucket, Bamboo, Puppet, CloudFormation, and Python. And we also utilize New Relic and Sumo Logic for our monitoring and observability. So there's been a lot of talk about observability today, and I have been researching this topic while I've been writing this presentation. And what I found was there's no really great definition of observability, at least one that made sense to me. So this one right here is from control theory. States that observability is a measure of how well internal states of a system can be inferred from knowledge of its external outputs. So I find it's a really abstract definition. I struggle to kind of apply it to the complex distributed IT systems that we're developing. So how I like to think about observability is more like this. Kind of following on from Nadia's talk. Observability is more than just monitoring. Observability is a measure of how observable a system is. And what I mean by how observable a system is the ability to understand what's happening inside your application or inside your system through all its dependencies. So that's through the network layer, the infrastructure layer, the application layer, even out to third-party services that you're utilizing, being able to understand if there's an issue in any of those layers. And if you can do that, then you have a truly observable system. And if you can do it all in one place, then that's really a kind of a utopian view. You have your single pane of glass where you can see all of your issues. And if I think about the way our at Post's observability platform or our monitoring ecosystem developed, it kind of follows this. We've spent a lot of time trying to develop our ecosystem so that we have 100% visibility and no gaps. So I'd just like to talk about our journey now and a little bit about the things that have influenced how we have developed and how our operations team specifically have developed. And the things that have been really important to us. So we've really focused on team structure and focus, collaboration and tools, and then how we bring it all together. So team structure and focus, it's a really important thing. Together, ordinary people can achieve extraordinary results. After 2013, we were struggling with our microservice architecture, our application landscape, and scaling rapidly. Microservices were proliferating, and it was really difficult for us to kind of keep up and keep the focus on the number of microservices we had. We had a small team who was trying to provide the operational function for our whole department, and it was difficult. The team was made up of systems administrators and software engineers, and we were, and they were responsible for the monitoring and resilience and availability of the applications. So due to the pace of change in the environment, we decided the best thing to do was create a kind of shared responsibility model with the delivery teams and make sure that they were aware of the issues and that they were responsible for some aspects of the operational things that needed to be done. And we created some hybrid models for support. And once that had happened, the team really focused on how they could better develop the the monitoring ecosystem and focus on providing more visibility. So they really operated with a mantra of 100% visibility through our monitoring for all of our applications. And they utilized New Relic APM, synthetics, sumo logic events, even bash scripts if that was what was required to get the visibility. So collaboration was really important, and we follow the vanilla ice rule: stop, collaborate, listen. This is Vanilla Ice for anyone who doesn't know. He was a rapper in the 1990s for all the young folk. Collaboration was really important. It was a two-way conversation, or making sure we had a two-way conversation with delivery teams. They needed to understand why we were trying to do the things we were doing. And we needed to appreciate that they had other work. They were delivering features. So we needed to work together and make sure that we were sort of effectively communicating. All of our APIs were built on a standard pattern, and they had API health checks built in. It was really important that we worked with the delivery teams and the developers to make sure that those health checks were instrumented correctly and that they were calling their dependencies and that the dependencies were showing the correct states. So once we had a screen where all of our APIs were calling all of their dependencies, we could very quickly identify when there was an issue. And once we had that, we significantly reduced our mean time to identify issues and also our mean time to resolve. So it was a big win, and it showed effective collaboration was really helpful. And some of the other ways that we collaborated with the delivery teams is to make sure we implemented a standard logging pattern, standard tagging patterns. We involved them in all of our DR activities, and we also involved them in blameless postmortem. So whenever there were issues, we made sure everyone was involved in it and everyone knew what was happening. So being able to create that environment where you can effectively collaborate was really important. So tooling, picking the right tool for the right job. It's tempting to try and get one tool that does everything for you to create the one pane of glass. Although looking at New Relic 1, perhaps we're getting very close to that now. It's also very tempting to use multiple tools for every different tech stack that you have. And in the long run, both of those strategies are not really sustainable. They're quite difficult to maintain all of the tools. So you really need to find your Goldilocks zone of the number of tools that you're supporting. Not too many, not too few, just the right number. So we had a small team, and because of that, we really wanted to make sure that we weren't wasting time or we weren't spending extra effort on supporting our tools. We wanted tools that were quick to value. We didn't want to spend heaps of time configuring them either. We wanted to just drop agents on the applications and start collecting data. So that led us to New Relic. And we've been really successful with New Relic. We've been using it since 2014. There were no Australian employees for New Relic at the time, and we purchased on a company credit card. At the same time, we were struggling with an on-premise logging system and spending a lot of time administering servers, checking disk space, patching, upgrading. And again, we didn't want to be experts in doing that. We wanted to be experts in using the software. So we moved our logging aggregation tool to a SaaS model. And it's been very successful, and we've got great results from doing that. So it's just really important to make sure that you're focusing on what brings value. So the tools need to provide value and not add more toil. So bringing it all together. As once we had an ecosystem in place, we couldn't just leave it. It takes a lot of care and attention. You're constantly tuning, you're constantly adding things. You need to always be making your monitoring better. And over time, what we found was we had a lot of different, we had a couple of tools, but we had a lot of different dimensions that we were monitoring, and it was hard to keep track of it all. So we wanted a way to kind of summarize and aggregate and bring it all together. So there wasn't anything available at the time, so we got some open source tools, and we started creating some visualizations that kind of brought all of our data together to give us, to try and give us a view of all of our apps that we could use. So we created this. This was one of the dashboards. So we had a couple of dashboards that we created. This was our API health check dashboard, and it shows a lot of our APIs and their dependencies. And it's very clear when something fails and the error comes up and actually shows you what the error is. So your mean time to identify is very quick. And it made the visibility for us much quicker. So the next thing for us was to help our delivery teams evolve their DevOps capability. And we wanted to utilize the lessons that we'd learned in developing our visualizations, but we also didn't want to burden them with all of the information, all of the things that they only needed to know about their specific subset of applications that they were using. So we created another tool which brought together all of the lessons that we had learnt from previous iterations. And it collected all the data together, and it just showed them exactly what they needed to see and nothing more. So a team can have a look at the dashboard and see just their APIs and just the metrics of those APIs that's important, and then just the violations that they need to actually act on. So we really focused on making sure that we were reducing the amount of information they had to see, making it specific for their context, and making sure that there wasn't, they weren't suffering from the alert fatigue that is common. So I guess to summarize our journey and the things that have been important for us, that having a central team or a central person that's responsible for monitoring and availability and resilience has been really important. And creating the right conditions for delivery teams to work together with your operations people, so that everyone works together and just understands the importance of monitoring. Making sure the tools you use are providing value and not creating toil or creating more work for you or your delivery teams. And also reducing the noise and making sure that the visibility you have is the important information and not anything extra. So reduce your alert fatigue. So these have been the sort of important things in our journey. And I'm sure there's something that everyone can take away today. If you've got any questions, I've got my details on the next slide. And thank you very much for listening.